Welcome to episode 11 of the SNARLcast about indie wargames and their design, coming to you from Snarling Badger Studios. I'm Adam, and I'm here with Vince. How you doing, Vince?
I'm doing great, buddy. I'm doing great. I'm very excited. Every time you start talking at the beginning, I'm always so excited because you have such a great voice. When you kick it off, it just builds up my energy so nicely. I'm like, oh, people are going to be excited about that. You really kick off the episode correctly, which ties in well to what we're talking about today, which is Kickstarter and why it's awful, but why you might need it. Segues.
You're good at those. That's very helpful. Yeah. We're going to talk about Kickstarter crowdfunding in general. There's alternatives. Kickstarter is the Xerox or Kleenex of crowdfunding. Yeah,
Coca-Cola.
But there's also there's some other ones as well that are coming up there, and we're going to talk about why or why not, and in my opinion, why not you should do it. But yeah. What have you been doing lately? What's been going on?
Oh man, I've been busy, so busy. So I'm as of this will be the last recording where I mention it, because I am wrapping up all my writing on the Art of book as we're recording this. I have maybe, I don't know, 3 hours left of writing to do on it. So I'll have that done by the time we're to the next episode. That's going to be great to lock that up. I do have to give it over to my wife and let her give it a read where she tells me everything that's wrong. She's always my first editor.
It's a good idea.
So I've been working on that. And as well, even though it's kind of jumping ahead a little bit on like quick update on our games, I'll just kind of roll it in there.
Yeah.
I've also started working on our micro game that will show up in Snarl in November. And I am pretty excited about it. Let me tell you what, like writing it, I got into a rhythm and I just kept going. Like I was just jazzed. You know what I mean? It feels good when like, yes, it's all just like the things were clicking. It was the clockwork gears were turning.
They do say the rhythm is going to get you. So that's important, I think, to be receptive to it, when it is about to get you. But that's good to hear. Yeah, absolutely. We've done some discussion on what we're thinking about for art and things like that. There's obviously not a lot of art in Snarl. There's always a cover, and then usually for the main, for the micro game, there's usually, I think the least was maybe 2 pieces of art, I think, on the internal, or maybe it was 3, but it's usually about 3 or 4 pieces. There's not a lot of space. You know what I mean? We don't.
Yeah, sure.
We're trying to keep page count down so that it's a smaller thing for you if you want to print it out and all that kind of stuff. We've got to stay within multiples of 4 if you do want to print it out, because you can't print out. When you're going to fold a piece of paper, it's going to make 4 pages, so we can't just leave a couple of pages blank. That would be weird. So we got to keep an eye on that kind of stuff. But yeah, that is in process, and Rain and Iron is also out as well. So if you're interested in checking that out, I've got a blog post to publish for that Vince wrote, kind of talking about design and things like that. So that'll be going up. Before you hear this is when you're
right. By the time you hear this, it is available. Just go to snarlingbadger.com. Yes.
Yeah, you'll find it there in the news or blog. I forget what it's either news or blog up in the top part, but yeah. I'm also going to be doing some updating on some merch stuff, so that'll be cool. There will be merch stuff for Majestic 13 and also which is a little bit due, and
right on time. Yeah, that's where we nail it. Yes.
Yeah,
and we call that striking while the iron's hot.
Yeah. And then also some merch stuff for Death Wizards. I've been wearing some merch stuff for Death Wizards in some of my videos, and people keep asking about it. So I've got it. I guess that's marketing right there. Is what that is. So yeah, that's also cool, and looking forward to that. Speaking of cool, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, it's been in the 90s Fahrenheit here in where I live. So hanging out in the sunroom, even with central air, has not been ideal. So, but luckily by Tuesday, I believe. So again, before you folks hear this, but by the Tuesday, it's going to get back into the 70s again, and it'll be rainy, and so that'll be lovely or lovelier weather, at least in my opinion. So
For you, man, I'll tell you what, we're just getting them 90s. It was here, it was like 95 today. I was loving it. I was outside. I was enjoying it.
ugh,
Great stuff.
I was
A plus.
outside at one point and it was terrible. I don't like it at all. And I did spend an okay amount of time in the basement today because I was working on some things I was painting. So there's talk about a segue. I mean,
That is solid right
yeah,
there.
no,
Absolutely.
that was
Yeah.
tight. That one just came
So
to me.
what are you painting, Adam? What have you been working on?
Well, I've been working on one page rules, robot legions. So they've got a 2-player box set that's going to be coming out at some point, and they sent some of us content creator nerds who are into that kind of thing. They sent some of us prototypes. So I've been working on some robot legions. It's robot legions versus the Saurian Star Host. They're basically
Space lizards.
space lizards, yeah, which is awesome. They're great sculpts too. And the Robot Legions guys, I like a lot. We've discussed them, I think, in the past, you and I.
Yep.
Um, and I've got a unit of 10 of the regular, like, infantry finished. I've got a couple of bigger kind of vehicle walker things nearly finished. There, I think I finished today was one that didn't completely finish. But I still have to finish their bases, but the rest of them are done. It's these kind of these like swarms of like little robot buggy guys. And so there's 3 bases of those, and those were fun to paint up. I got a little fancier than I was planning, but I think it turned out okay. And now the 2 main HQ units, I actually just before that we recorded, I had been working on them earlier today and textured their bases. So I primed them and started doing some base coating, mainly on their capes with my
Sure.
airbrush. And then I'm going to let that cure overnight or whatever. And then I'll probably start working on getting in there with some brush painting and working on those guys. There's 3 robot snakes that I need to still paint,
Sure.
and then a unit of
As you
10.
would.
Yeah, yeah,
Are
yeah.
they so they're robot snakes. So this is for the robot people. Because
Yeah,
the lizard people could also have snakes.
that is
You could have
true. That is
snake on
true.
snake action.
It's yeah. I think it's I think that they're much smaller, but like the Necrons have these things called wraiths, if I remember correctly, and
Okay.
they've got a very sort of almost spidery, yeah, snaky kind of, not spidery, more maybe centipede-ish kind of snaky kind of look. And I
Sure.
think these are
Insectoid in some way.
yeah, but long,
Mhm.
like, and segmented, and these guys are like that, but slightly smaller. Like, not everything is a one-to-one switch over. A lot of things, you can pull from, say, your 40K models and directly bring them into the game. And there's even a wiki from one page rules that it's like, if you want to use a model for this unit, you could use this from 40K, this from Mantic, this. They've got lots of different things to kind of give you
Gotcha.
ideas, which is nice. Anyway, I'm just using the regular stuff, and the snake guys are unit of 3. So, and they're not huge. They're like kind of 40 millimeter bases. So they're not huge. And then there's 10 uh, hand-to-hand combat kind of guys with like shields and these kind of cool sort of axey swordsy things. And then there's 10 more regular warriors, and then that's 1,000 points done. So it'll be very interesting to like finish an army. Like, it's something I haven't done in years.
Yeah,
Now,
sure.
admittedly, it's a small army, but it's something I haven't done it in years.
Yeah, you've been more of a skirmish player for a long
Absolutely.
time. It's just the way you like doing your projects. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I love an army because I just, I don't know, I got a concept. I like bringing the whole thing together, but it's the kind of thing where you have to be willing or interested or love that thing enough that you're willing to plow 6, 9 months of your life into just painting that same thing, right?
See,
So,
and that's the trick. I think there's 2 things that have made this for me a thing I want to do. Number one, 1,000 points in most situations, 1,000 points of grimdark future is not a lot of models. Thousand
yeah,
points,
sure. A little
is
more
not
elite, little lower model
a
count.
lot of lower model count. Like, max model count, I think, with this army is going to be 10, 20, 30, 33, 35. It's going to be fewer than 50 models. So it's
Yeah,
like
sure.
maybe even 45. Second thing, all of them are 3D printed. Now, when you actually buy this in stores, when it does eventually get into stores, it will be in, I think what they said is it's going to be in hard PVC. So I don't know if you're going to have to build them, but because what they sent out to us people, us creator types was all it was all prototype. They were all 3D printed, which meant
So much
I didn't
nicer. It just makes the world so much easier.
I didn't have to build didn't have to build a dang thing. I just literally
Yeah.
just glued them to bases, textured bases on my way. You get to shave off some support nipples here and there, and that's fine. But if I had to build and then paint an army, I would be far, far less likely to. And so yeah, that's why I'm more interested. And then, like I said, also the lizards are predominantly also well, they're not. That's the interesting thing. There's like 3 units of the lizards that came in this box. They get basically threw in this extra sheet, and it says those are made out of like the production material, but all the rest of the lizards besides those 3 units are all 3D printed. So it'll be also interesting to kind of like compare and contrast. I haven't gone through all the little baggies of lizards yet, but it's interesting. I was talking a little bit, about this on a live show recently. That was this broken truth thing, and it'll be very interesting to see how much it's going to cost. Like if it's
Oh, sure.
I mean, it's 2 1,000 point armies and all the stuff you need, including terrain and dice and the whole and tokens.
Yeah, it's the whole shooting match all in. The box
Yeah.
looks good too. They had the box there at TMX. Looked cool.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, like if they could hit it around, I don't know, $200 or something like that. I mean, that's something. So anyway, yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been just mainly working on those guys, and it's been fun. I've got some GW guys I'm thinking about doing some kit bashing with from their newer it's on pre-order right now, but it's a newer Kickstarter, or sorry, not Kickstarter, Kill Team kit called not Typhus, Typhon, I don't know, something. And there's like Tyranids, and I'm like, meh. But then there's also some like servitors, and I'm like, yeah, those would be kind of cool for some kit bashing. But otherwise, I
Gotcha.
haven't
Okay.
really been looking at that stuff too much at all. And I've also started doing a little bit of work on some models for the micro game as well. So
Absolutely. Yeah, that's going to
planning
come up
ahead.
fast. Yeah.
So
So for me
yeah,
to paint, I've been doing 2 things largely. So the first thing I was doing, pretty exciting, is I've been playing with the AK Real Color paint markers. Okay. So there's sort of 2 different brands or varieties of these. One is like called play markers or something, and one's called like Real Colors. Or 2 different kinds. I don't know, varieties. They're both by AK. But at any rate, one of them basically has like a marker tip. Think of it like a long Sharpie tip. Does that make sense to you?
like a
Can you
felt
picture what I'm
tip.
saying? Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Sure.
And one of them has like a squidgy synthetic brush tip. Okay.
So with actual bristles.
Yeah, of a sort, but like
Yeah.
the bristles are like long and some kind of polymer, they're not like hair or anything.
No. I think I've got a friend who gave me some of those types of markers empty. She works in an industry where they do a lot of work with pens. They print logos on pens and things like that. And I mentioned something about paint markers, and then she was like, well, hang on. And then she gave me these, and these have, like, they're empty. I can put whatever paint I want in them, but they have
but it has like
little
some kind
brushes,
of brush-ish
and it's
tip.
not
Yeah,
felt.
exactly.
Yeah, like there's you can splay it apart if you want to, which is different. You
Right.
couldn't do that with a felt tip, but yeah, and other companies have done that stuff too. Deep Cut Studios from Europe, I think they did a bunch of paint markers working with the Army Painter folks for speed paints.
So, long story short, I really don't like the ones that have the brush tip and find them to be kind of the worst of all possible worlds. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because it's like a bad brush with bad control that you can't control the consistency or flow of the paint on.
I would also think that it would get like you would get stuff stuck in it. Like you know what I mean? If it dries in there,
maybe.
You don't
I don't know.
rinse it or whatever.
In my testing, I didn't have any issue with that. It was pretty liquidy, but
Okay.
maybe that could happen, especially if you like left them open for slightly too long.
Mm.
But the felt tip ones, like the Real Color ones, dude, I love them. I really do. They're great. They're really good.
I can't imagine painting with a marker. I just
it feels so weird,
Yeah.
but they're so effective and efficient at what you're doing.
Mm.
Like I am there'll be a video coming out on this on my channel at some point in the future, and just like for base coding or sketch highlighting, like if you're trying to do sketch style, right, where you just like knock it in some highlights, and then you're going to work it back together with like say washes or something, right? Like let's say you're going to do like an all over kind of grimy wash or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They're so effective at that. It's so fast. Now the model can't have a lot of tucked away little things. Like you can't, the tip of it only goes so small, if that
So you
makes
can't
sense, right? Like
yeah,
it's
you
not an
can't reach
ultra
into
fine thing.
nooks and crannies as well.
Yes, exactly. So you're just not getting that thing into like nookies and crannies. But like I had a relatively open model and I was able to paint the whole thing, like get base colors down the whole thing, like skin and hair and metal and cloth and cloak and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants and
Fancy.
boots and pants and boots. I was able to get all that done like super fast.
Mhm.
And then honestly, just like do some other stuff, just do some washes, do some, quick things with the brush.
Mhm.
And I felt like that came together super fun. And it was like honestly great. And I'll tell you why. When you change colors, Adam, it's like you got to get out your paint. You take your paint, you put it on your wet palette, or you open the thing, or whatever, whatever
Mhm.
you're doing, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas this, I was just like, pop, draw, close, done, right? Like you just picked up the like it felt so fast, just not messing with the paint. I don't know that I do it for like a competition or display model, obviously,
Sure,
but
yeah.
like as a base coat for my army stuff, I think I'd use this. I really
Mm.
do. Like, I think these would just be like kind of a go-to quick thing.
For me, I don't know. I guess I'd have to try it out. I just don't, I'm not sure about the pen stuff. Like I will use incredibly tiny, super, super, super tiny little markers sometimes like
Yeah, sure.
for
You're
like
the classic,
writing on,
like, what are they? Micron pens, right?
yeah,
To
the
do like
Pigment
tiny
micron
little.
pens to writing on
Yeah,
scrolls and stuff like that or
sure.
whatever.
Classic.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I've never tried it, so I guess I shouldn't completely, poo poo it, but I would be interested in taking a look. Um,
Yeah, I mean, for doing stuff like I one of the things I did to give it a test was I painted up one of those silly endless spells. Okay. Like
mhm.
I'm talking
From
about the
Age of
like
Sigmar, yeah.
manifestation endless spells from Age of
Yep.
Sigmar.
Mhm.
And it just made it like so fast and easy. Now I like the colors, they don't have like a million colors. So when you do highlight colors, there's like a huge jump you can see because you can't blend with
Yeah, yeah,
them,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Because you can't blend with the markers. But then
Mhm.
I just like I laid down all the colors I wanted and then just like went in with like something in the middle of the two colors in a real paint with a brush and just like bop, 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 glaze the line. And it was fine. Done instantly.
I
So
wonder
it
if it
was
would,
easy.
if you had a pen that had, I mean, you'd have to keep the tip clean somehow, and I don't know how you would do that. But if you had one of those pens, whether it was the felt tip type or even a brush type, that just had medium in it for blending,
Oh, yeah, maybe. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
That's
I
kind
don't
of
know.
maybe a cool idea for them to explore. So
Maybe, yeah.
that was one thing I was working on. It was a good time. Look forward to you'll see the video eventually. The
Mhm.
other thing though that I'm really excited about is I'm working on a new competition slash display piece. It's something I wanted to do for a while. And it is called Snake Heart. It is a piece based on a piece of Brahm artwork from Mindwork Games.
Mhm.
And actually, I didn't get to play anything this week because I wanted to honestly, like, it's been a while since I've gotten to spend a whole day painting.
Mhm.
Like I paint every day, but I don't usually get to spend the whole day painting.
Sure, sure.
That's a luxury. But I just happened to have this Saturday where basically, other than like an hour of commitment in the middle of the day and meetings, I had the whole day free. Like, Kathy didn't, my wife didn't need anything. I was
Mhm.
just free and clear. So I got up in the morning and just started painting and just sat at my desk and just painted for like basically, I think I did about 14 hours of painting that day.
Wow. Yeah,
And
yeah.
man, it felt great. Like it's been a minute and it was great. So I missed it.
Nice.
And so yeah, I'm working along on that. I'm working on the cool barbarian guy, making him look all dead and stuff. I've still got a ton more work to do on him, but I like what he's at
Sure.
so far.
Are you thinking about taking it to Nova? That's like the next
Yeah.
big competition I can think of. Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Nova. That's I think that's gonna be fun.
Oh, it's gonna be a great time.
I'll be honest, I was a little bummed that I wasn't at Origins. I just saw a lot of people posting stuff
Yeah, it's
from
happening right now.
Origins.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Like,
this
well, it
weekend.
ended as we're recording this,
Yeah, yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's Sunday night. But yeah, I was like, yeah, I could, then I could have hung out with you and Kathy a little bit potentially as well and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, maybe in the
Hey, you're
future, but
welcome anytime.
yeah, yeah. But right now, it did not make sense this year. But maybe soon. Um, so you haven't played anything? I haven't really played anything, unfortunately. But I was looking at, I still haven't pulled the trigger yet. Um, oh gosh, Exploit Zero Omnibus. That's
Okay.
a PDF that I'm going to buy. It's by Patrick Todorov, who
Oh,
wrote
sure.
Zoa
Okay.
Alpha
Yep.
and many other things.
Great
And
designer.
yeah, yeah, yeah. and it is basically it's a cyberpunk espionage and mayhem kind of miniature game. Updated edition with new illustrations, modifications, blah blah blah. Exploit Zero Omnibus is a set of fast play rules, which I'm interested in messing with, and it's like 70 pages, and it's PDF only, so there's no print version, which is fine by me.
You
But
love the PDFs.
I
You're a
do. Yeah,
PDF guy.
that's totally true. I mean, it's not the fanciest insides, it doesn't have a super fancy layout and everything like that. But I don't know. I like his games, so that's something that I'm looking forward to. I'm going to pull a trigger on that next time I think of it. And but otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much about it. I did do a little bit of terrain work this weekend too. Um, and then my video that came out on Friday was about Rust, and I kind of came up with a fun. It was
It looked
interesting.
good.
Yeah, thanks. It turned out well. I mean, it's a very simple mixture of just like three. It's like the fresh rust effects paint from Army Painter. It's the rust tone wash from Army Painter, and then a little bit of speed paint medium in there, and it just works out really well. It kind of, especially if you lay down water first and then lay that in there, it kind of just flows into the spots it needs to go, and it dries and it works and everything. And it was really funny because there were so many people in the comments who were like, "Yeah, but dirty down rust though, that's the," and
Oh, sure.
I'm like, "Yeah, but that's $20 for a 25 millimeter bottle or 25 milliliter bottle, and this is $14 and change for three 18 milliliter bottles, and each of them can do their own thing separately, and all that kind of stuff." And dirty down is a very cool effect if you can make it work. It's just for me not something I would, because it says right on the bottle semi permanent, and it's just, to me, it's not robust enough for terrain. You know what I mean? Like,
No, it can absolutely. Yeah, I get it. I mean, it can absolutely be, sort of reactivated. You generally have to varnish it to lock it in, stuff like
mhm.
that. Yeah,
But it
absolutely.
just
Yeah.
can have a very delicate, like, it's got an amazing matte finish when you use it for like a display piece.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But on terrain, you either have to varnish the heck out of it, or it's just going to get rubbed off.
Yeah, because your
Terrain
figs are
takes,
going to move around. It's going to scrape
yeah,
around. Terrain
exactly.
takes punishment. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
You
But it
stack
was,
terrain on top of each other and stuff like that all the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So but it was just interesting how many people were kind of brought that up. And I was like, yeah, but this is cheaper and more robust. And, but, whatever. I think it's a marketing thing, which we're about to talk about a little bit as
People
well.
like,
So,
look, man, KitchenAid mixers, they do the thing really well. There, you can get other mixers, but you can just do it with a little stick. But KitchenAid mixers sell really well. When you do the thing really well, people love the thing.
I think they sell really well because you can set it and not forget it, but you don't, like a stick one, or with a handheld, you got to stand there. Whereas this, you can just go do other stuff while you're, like, prepare the
Also,
next
they're
part
aesthetically
of the
pleasing
thing.
and just they're very successful at the thing. It's a
They
well-designed
are,
product.
they are visually stimulating for sure.
I'm gonna guess that nobody on their bingo card for this episode had that we were going to talk about KitchenAid mixers. So I gotcha.
No, that's a
Gotcha.
good point.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
something new every time, folks. When you tune in, you're always gonna.
Throwing curves every time.
You're,
Yeah, yeah.
that's right. We've got nothing but curveballs here, or
Hmm.
all of a sudden fastball, because that is suddenly a curveball when I'm only throwing curveballs. Boom, got him. Sports.
Indeed. No one had on their bingo card that we were going to talk about sports either, because
Absolutely.
not really
You should
our
tune in
wheelhouse.
later for our NBA finals coverage. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely. Okay.
indeed. So the main topic, for this episode is about Kickstarter. Now, when we say Kickstarter, we kind of mean, crowdfunding in general. But Kickstarter is again, like, it's the well-known one. It's the Kleenex, it's the Xerox, it's the whatever. And the title is why Kickstarter is awful and why you might need it.
That's
Now,
right.
I am not as necessarily attached to that second part of that title
Sure.
as maybe you are, but nonetheless, that's what we're going to discuss. And again, like I said, there's Kickstarter. The big ones these days are Kickstarter and GameFound, and
Right.
there's is BackerKit. I know
Mhm.
BackerKit
Yeah.
started as an add-on, but it's also now it's a standalone, isn't it?
As far as I know, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. I
haven't
don't.
messed around with it at all, but yeah, I mean, GameFound and Kickstarter is the main sort of two you
The
tend to
main
see
two
these.
big ones that yeah, and I have currently, I'm on the bubble waiting for projects from both of them, of course, right now. So there's that. But the idea with behind crowdfunding in general is that you get people to say, yes, here's money ahead of time so that you can make the thing that you're telling them about, basically.
Okay, so I want to take this like the normal way you would do this show would be one of us would be very pro the
Mm-hmm.
thing, and one of us would be very anti the thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we would have a reasonable debate listing the pros and cons for our listeners to decide what was the appropriate thing for them.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, the reality is I think we're both anti this thing.
We kind
Okay.
of are. Yeah. Now,
But
I'm
but
not saying that in general it's a terrible idea. I'm just
no.
saying specifically for indie folks, it's not a great idea.
So let me I want to kind of take this back to the screws here. Okay. What I mean by that is like, I, the idea of this thing was really good when it launched, right? Like Kickstarter in general and crowdfunding platforms in general. It
Absolutely.
was this idea of like, cool, we'll let, people who don't have access to easy PE money or VC money or investment dollars in general, right? Who aren't big companies have access to everybody in this sort of meritocracy thing, right? Where if
Hmm.
you can show a really cool idea, people will fund it and then you can bring your idea to life. Okay, so conceptually, that's great, right?
The first thing that I ever did, I think, on Kickstarter was it was a smartwatch called the Pebble. You've ever heard of that?
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So I did the smartwatch, the Pebble smartwatch, and it was a smartwatch like we know today, except it just had an e-ink screen, so it lasted for like forever or for a really long time battery wise and stuff like that. And that Kickstarter raised millions of dollars, and people
Right.
were
It was
like
I remember
stunned
it being
by it.
like super successful
Yeah,
back in the day.
people
Yeah.
were stunned by it, and that was like, and they did eventually actually get it out. It took longer than most people thought, but that's the way these things seem to go. And but it did the job. It did what it was supposed to do.
That's right. So, but the problem is that what ended up happening, what has happened is that for the most part, entrenched interests moved into Kickstarter. So, what I mean by that is like established companies that
Mhm.
had plenty of funding to conduct their business moved in and upped the level of quality you needed for the campaign. To effectively, they raised the bar so high of the expectations around a campaign and what that campaign contains and what it's going to promise and what its stretch goals are and the art and the prep and everything, right? Because they had resources on staff they could use to do this. If you're one indie creator, you can't necessarily do all that as easily, right?
Mhm.
And they can just use their staff. Like Reaper for a long time, this was their main strategy, right? Like Bones 1, Bones 2, Bones
Yep.
70,000, right?
Mhm.
And they had this down to a science. Like I literally went to a talk at a ReaperCon many years ago about like how we do our Kickstarters, right? And they just walked through the entire process. They had got it down to just like a process because they had just internal staff dedicated to this thing. It was nothing more than a sales channel to them.
It was pre-sales.
Correct.
Yeah.
It just entrenched large companies moved in and were able to utilize this platform presenting their existing people they were already paying that are funded by their existing products and services, right? To put out highly polished campaigns that then made the indie things become very hard to notice,
Exactly.
right?
Cool Mini or not, for it was a huge example. They still do it.
Sure.
Like nearly every time they make something, they do it
Well, I mean,
on
I'm
a
not sure they're
Kickstarter.
around anymore. They're kind of imploding, but
Oh
nonetheless,
yeah,
sure.
that's a good point because of the tariffs, but that's a whole different thing altogether. But for quite some time, they were known as the big company that constantly needed to put their hat in hand and say, "Oh, cool, please help us make this game that we've already finished and it's already in production or whatever," and that kind of
Right.
stuff.
Well,
Mantic
that's
was
another
doing
thing.
it for
They're
a
all
while.
doing that,
Mantic
right?
stopped. Yeah, a lot of them were, and some of them dialed it back. Like Mantic used to do that, and then eventually they were like, "Look, we're going to cut doing that." And for the most part, they did. Not on everything. Some of the things they still did that way, but a lot of the things like Kings of War in general, they decided to come out
Sure.
with a new edition of Kings of War, and they're just like, we're just going to sell it like back in the old days, and take a
Yep.
risk, yeah, I guess. And that was, I appreciate that personally. But yeah, it did definitely become a sales channel, and it did definitely kind of change the way that things were designed. Hasbro, this drives me insane. Hasbro was like, well, we gotta put stuff out there in like a crowdfunding thing. Hasbro, giant multi-billion-dollar company, they got to do
Yes, a very
crowdfunding.
large
Yeah,
company.
they got to do
Yes.
some crowdfunding to see if they can make a new game or widget or whatever.
Yeah,
But
the Hero Quest remake was done on it, but
right.
not on Kickstarter or GameFound. It was done on their personal
Right.
thing.
So they couldn't afford to make Hero Quest, but they could afford to design and build and deploy their own Kickstarter clone so
Right.
that they wouldn't have to pay the 9 or 12 or whatever percentage to Kickstarter. And I'm like, if you can afford to build Kickstarter, then you can afford to just sell stuff. But again,
Yeah.
that's me being salty. So
No,
but
I'm with you. I
yeah,
the same exact thing I said at the
yeah,
time. I thought that was insane.
yeah.
Um, so that's like, and that's sort of at the root of this. That's the
Mm,
problem with it, right? Is there was certainly a time where, as an indie creator, it was easier to like get on the front page to be shown, and like to be fair to like Kickstarter, they've tried to work hard to reprioritize indie creators over the past couple years and to try to get people up there. That's also why things like GameFound exist, because it's focused on our niche market and it is easier to get there. But I want to point out this base problem that's still there, right?
mm-hmm.
People only have so much bandwidth. You've got a signal to noise problem. Okay. So that's at the bottom. Now, I also say this from the point of view of I have run a successful Kickstarter. Okay. I have
Mm-hmm.
gone down this road. Like behind me in my videos is a giant poster of like a superhero lady and a knight and a cowboy and a big poster that says NGS, right? And that is the game that I successfully kickstarted. Okay.
How
So,
long ago was that?
and it was 2013.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And, that was like, and it was a nightmare. Like it was so insane. It took so much work. Okay. And that's what I want to get into here. All
Mm-hmm.
right. The doing this thing is not oftentimes in the modern world. If you know people, if you've got a hip idea, there are people right now handing out millions and billions of dollars based on effectively a pretty shoddy business plan and a pitch, right? Somebody
Sure.
walks in, they're like, I'm going to use AI to do this thing. Here's a chart. Here's some projections. And they're like, looks great. Here's $2 billion. Like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you want to kickstart something, you have to go so much farther than that, right? So let's start with the why it's awful part. I want to start there, and then we'll talk about the why you might need it. Even back then, this is 12 years ago, and frankly, you need to do better than what I did then. I had 3 people, so myself and 2 other people, ran this Kickstarter. It took 3 of us to do this, okay? So you have to, because we had to prep and write all the copy, we had to create all the art assets. So I had to reach out to artists, pay all of the artists for all their work in advance. So I had to have enough capital to do that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get together all and plan out all the stretch goal. When I say write all the copy, I mean like everything, right?
Yeah.
You've got to write the campaign, the text for the rewards. You got to write the text and descriptions for your game, and like, and on and on and on. It's actually quite a lot of stuff you're going to have to write that isn't you writing your game.
And even beyond that, if you don't have one of those cool videos at the top of your page, why'd you even start? You know what I mean? Like,
Correct.
And like you said, you need money to have the art so that you can have the art ahead of time to because if you just go into it going, there's going to be cool art and it's going to be a cool game and you should totally give me $50, you're not going to get jack. If you're like, well, I want to be able to use the Kickstarter money to get the art, bad luck. It's not going to work out because you're not going to attract people without having the art ahead of time. Like I've never seen a Kickstarter that was just like black and white. We don't have anything except for an idea and a dream. You know what I mean?
That's
That's
right.
just that's the way it should be, right? You should be able to do that, but nobody's going to do that. You got to have a cool video. You got to have, and so you're spending all that money up front anyways.
Yep.
And that's just to get the Kickstarter going, and you're not even marketing the Kickstarter, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, and certainly you're going to reuse some of those assets in the creation of the game. So I don't want to make it like you're flushing that money away, but like you writing all this different stuff, right? For the campaign description and the risks and this and that and the other thing. Like it's a ton of extra writing you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to write constant updates to people throughout the campaign. You've got to go and write marketing teasers and Twitter posts and Facebook posts and social media posts and like everything else, right? And all of that work is just going to be throwaway that you're doing because most of that you're not going to reuse it when you actually want to sell the game when it releases, right? Like let's say you are successful, you release the game. A lot a lot of it you're going to need new copy for all of that stuff because you're going to have stuff that's like available now or whatever.
It's a jumping off point for some of the text you might have on your website after the thing launches. Maybe.
Potentially.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of it, probably easily 70% of it is fire and forget. It's only for the Kickstarter campaign.
And I don't want to understate those stretch goals. Okay. This is like the biggest thing. Everybody just expects if the stretch goal thing, I hate so much. I really do. Okay. Because what I want to, if I had a thing that I wanted to bring to Kickstarter, I have the idea. That's what I'd like to do. Now, it's not that all stretch goals are silly because sometimes in your head, you've got like a must have and a nice to have.
Sure.
Right. So, like, here's this game. And if we can get to this amount of money, I'm also going to make a cool set of cards as a supplementary game aid for it. Like,
absolutely.
Great. Okay. Makes sense. Right. That's a perfectly fine stretch goal. But that's not what people expect. People expect that when you hit certain total amounts of money, they're just going to get more for their pledge. Right.
Yeah. The idea behind Kickstarter from the consumer's mindset is I'm giving you this money ahead of time.
Right.
And taking this risk. My expectation is I'm going to get a buttload of free stuff.
That's right.
I mean,
because as we unlock all these stretch goals, you'll get this bonus thing and bonus this bonus thing and this bonus thing. And this is also unlocked, right? And so on and so forth. And ideally, by the by, those are the reason those are so important. Like, I get why they're there. They're there because they encourage people to keep spending after you've reached your target, right? Because the system incentivizes you to set your target very low, frankly, below what you would need to actually succeed, quote unquote, in the project, right?
You see it all the time. You see people who are like, oh, we were funded in 27 seconds. And I'm like, yeah, but you set your funding goal at $2,000. You can't do jack for $2,000. Yeah, you hit $2,000 pretty quickly. Yep, good job. But you actually need to raise $200,000 to be able to get these molds made and this and all this other stuff that you say you're going to do. And that's a huge risk that you as the publisher take, or the creator or whatever designer, is when you set your goal too low. And so you're constantly on the seesaw about like, well, if I go low, then I can do a bunch of stretch goals, but stretch goals can put you out of business.
Absolutely. So like what it comes that's exactly right. Oh my gosh, I want to break that apart into so many different things. You're incentivized to set the goal as basically low and shaved to the bone as you can to be minimally successful if you hit it, assuming only the most positive and rosy scenario. We'll talk about downside risks later, right? And then you're incentivized to create a bunch of stretch goals that are going to add costs, right?
Yeah,
and add more variables.
Yeah.
And you do that so that people keep spending. And so they don't get to like, well, my goal was $5,000 or $5,000, right? And I hit that $5,000 and it's like, everybody's like, okay, we're good. This is already funded, right? So what are we talking about here? I'm not getting anything more. You put in the stretch goals so people go, oh, I want to back it too. I want to back it too, right? And
right,
then,
exactly, yeah.
And then people keep spending to get you to your actual goal, which is probably 2, 3, 4, 10x, whatever you put in as the actual thing. Okay. And again, it's important to realize that exactly as you said, you got to have like videos and art and pre-prepped marketing and all this stuff. Okay. Like graphics, renders. If it's a miniature game, like painted models. Yeah. Right. Like people don't want to see just renders. They want to see like some test model printed that you sent and got 3D printed and painted up and stuff like that.
Even if it's a render, that still means it's done. It's sculpted. It may not be like finished form, but you still had to pay a sculptor and probably also a concept artist to get to that point where you can just show a render. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And then if you do get it printed and then you hand it off to somebody to get painted, and hopefully there's somebody that has a name, you know, like, because I know, like, because you've painted stuff for Kickstarter.
I've painted stuff for
Sam has, like, all kinds of people, yeah. And so, yeah, there's all, yeah. It is definitely, it is not I'll do this to make money so that I can launch my game. It's basically I have to have money to be able to do this so that I can then get more money to launch my game.
And there's the ultimate problem, right? So, like, the issue is, it's not what it should be. Is a concept where if people have a good idea, it allows them to bring that idea to life, right? That seems to be conceptually what it's about. But there's actually a huge floor on this for how much you have to have if you want to run a successful campaign, right? I was able to do it mostly on the cheap. I think I spent, so to launch the campaign, like, because all my time and my two friends' time that were doing it was all free,
Mhm.
right? So to launch my RPG, which is much simpler than launching a miniature game, by the
Oh
way.
god, yeah.
Okay. Especially because like especially a miniature game with miniatures, like
Oh
not
god, yeah.
miniature
And if
agnostic.
it's because yeah, if it's miniature agnostic or an RPG, it's generally just a book, and that's all you're gonna mess
That's
with.
right. So I think I was in at that time in 2013. I think I had to spend, I don't know, 1,000 to $1,500 beforehand.
Mhm.
Okay. My campaign goal was like $3,500 to make the book. Right. And so, to get to that point, I did it at the time because I was like, oh, this is what people are doing. I had read about it. I spent a bunch of time researching. This is a good way to be successful. And like, to be fair, we got more than double our goal. So like it was successful and it was great. Total, I made no money from that.
Mhm.
I want to be clear. When you factor in, and that was with a bunch of people supplying their time to me for free,
Mhm.
right? When you factor in everything I paid to like pay all the artists, because of course I'm going to pay artists I want to work for a fair wage, right? And like industry standard,
Yep.
and all of the printing costs, and because it wasn't like a print on demand thing when we initially did it, so
Mhm.
all the printing costs and shipping costs, both to me and then back out, since I had to be the shipper of all of the rewards for people and
Mhm.
everything, and just like compensating it all out. I would be shocked if I cleared off of that. Like if I was even in the black. I don't know that I ever went and really totaled it all up. But
Mhm.
if I was in the black, it was like with my tidy profits, I could go out and get myself a nice number 4 at McDonald's for the afternoon, right? And it would be like, well, there we go. There's my
I mean,
profits gone.
not these days, but back then.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I the thing about the goals that we talked about before, not the stretch goals, but the like, I need to raise this much money. It, it there's so many of these different Kickstarters that you come across that have succeeded, and I just used air quotes there, but you couldn't see it. Um, but they didn't because exactly what you said. They set their goal to a certain thing, and then they didn't quite hit it, and then there you kind of go. And it becomes a real kind of problem of balance. I've read articles from people who have lost their house due to a successful Kickstarter,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you
Yes.
know what I mean. And
The
very frequently, it's
yes.
just because they just didn't plan ahead properly, and that kind of stuff. I think for stretch goals, honestly, some of the smarter stretch goals that I've seen were from Trench Crusade. A lot of the stretch goals were like, if we make this much money, then we'll pay Gav Thorpe to write a story.
Sure.
You don't have to ship anything to anybody. You make
Yeah,
some
yeah.
money, you give it to Gav, you get a story, you put it on the website, done deal. And that kind of stuff, or you put it in the book, I guess.
Yeah,
But
and I want to expound upon that in the why
yeah,
you
yeah,
might
yeah,
need it area.
sure,
Absolutely.
sure.
So, I mean, ultimately, the other thing to remember is like when you see a big Kickstarter number, like somebody raised, $60,000, $200,000, $3 million, whatever it is, right? They're not getting all that money,
No.
right? Like, not only does Kickstarter take a big chunk of it, right?
Hmm.
Um,
And
but
credit card
then all,
transaction.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, they take some too.
Yes. But then you got that. And then also, of course, then you have all your costs to actually produce the thing and blah, 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 blah. Right. So don't think just because somebody had $1 million Kickstarter that they're suddenly a millionaire. Like, no, 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 no. That's
No.
definitely not the world. All right. So the other thing that I want to push in here real quick, especially, and this is unique to the miniature game space, or like board games would also suffer from this, but anybody where you're getting something produced, it's very
Hmm.
important to understand. When you are getting stuff that's produced, pieces, parts, minis, plastic chips, like I don't care, something,
Custom
right?
dice, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Like when you're planning that out, you can go get quotes and stuff like that and get potential costs and those sorts of things of what that's going to be. And you can use that for your business planning, and you should. Okay. But there's no guarantee that's what that stuff is actually going to cost when it comes time to deliver it, like a year later or whatever. Costs can move around. Suddenly there's like a tariff in place or something, or
Hmm.
there's like or some material that you use has a run and goes way up in cost, and then your producer is going to upcharge you. Like I've seen this happen a ton of times, right? Paper costs will fluctuate around, stuff like that, right?
Paper costs
And
fluctuate
so,
constantly.
exactly. So you are absorbing all of the risk, right? And so if you look at Kickstarter and think like, oh, this is a way to minimize risk, it's really not. Like you,
No.
because you're often going to end up having to promise way more than what you originally were. And that is going to increase the risk beyond what it would have been had you just made the thing.
And in the indie space, you are doing predominantly all the work. You know what I mean? When you're an indie kind of thing and you're like, "Oh, I raised $7,000 on my Kickstarter." Well, you're gonna have to be spending a lot of nights putting stuffs in envelopes and putting labels on envelopes and then going to the post office. Like, there's not a fulfillment company that's going to work with a number that low. If you're like, "I raised $7,000," they're gonna be like, "We don't touch anything under $100,000," because they know what kind of profits and margins and all that kind of jazz. So, not only are you, yes, you did get the thing, but it sets you up for an incredible amount of work, and from people who frankly are going to complain if it's even a minute late and all that kind of stuff, and it's a whole deal. So you're dealing with constant messages and a barrage of angry comments, and you're having to try to spin that, and it's a lot.
Yeah. Now, this is the final thought. As we leave, I want to leave behind the why it's awful section, and then we'll go to the why you might need it section. Here's
Mhm.
my final thought. I ran that Kickstarter one time. You and I have now made,
Five of them,
7 games, 5
like,
books, 2 zines,
yeah,
as
yeah.
that's how that breaks down, right? And we're
Hmm.
doing the next
Hmm.
ones. And we had a discussion way back in the day of like, do we want to do this about Kickstarter with through Kickstarter? Very early on, right? We
Hmm.
had that discussion.
Hmm.
And we both said no,
Right.
absolutely not.
Hmm.
And I have never regretted that once. After running one Kickstarter, I would never want to run another one again. It was awful.
I had a discussion with Scott at your house during a VinciCon, and we were talking about the Kickstarter that he was trying to finish up at that point, and he was still maybe another year out from finally. I think when he did actually finally finish get everything and all the parts, and then he had to send everything out. And at that time, he's like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to do another Kickstarter ever again."
Right.
And I can totally understand it. Like, yeah, sure, you made money, but did you? But the amount of work and all that kind of stuff that comes up, you have to take your own time to some degree into, like if you've already got a day job, you have to understand that you're going to be able to do it, do this when you're off your day job. If you're like Scott and the video channel and stuff like is your day job, it's still a day job. It's still
Yeah, it
something that
draws away from his. He made a lot
exactly,
less videos that year because he was dealing with all that Kickstarter stuff.
exactly,
100%.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Now, why, despite all of this, it being awful and risky and time consuming and actually expensive and all of that, might you need it? Okay. So I'll say one of the advantages is that if your idea needs like miniatures, packaging, pieces, parts, plastic chips, and whatever, right? Those do cost a lot of money. Okay. They just do. Because oftentimes you'll have to purchase that stuff in like lots, right? You can't, it's not something you can just get like one of. You got to buy them in like runs of 10,000 or
Hmm.
something,
Hmm.
And if you're going to do that, the only way you're going to, unless you're independently wealthy, the only way you're going to do that is by having the Kickstarter money, right? That's
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
And and so it's still risky, right? But it
Yeah.
might be the only answer.
Hmm. My response to that would be you don't need miniatures and packaging and pieces and parts and all that kind of stuff. I would tell you, especially since we're talking about indie games here, I would definitely tell you to start small and grow slowly. And I would tell you, make yourself a miniature agnostic game or make yourself a game that has STLs, and then then they can go all over the world and you don't have to ship them and you don't have to tariffs and this and all that kind of stuff. If your idea absolutely has to have miniatures, then you would need probably some sort of rich uncle and then do a Kickstarter because you're going to need
Right.
that rich uncle money to get the
You still got to
Kickstarter
go
to
get the
work.
renders and the digital art and all that, or
All
the
that
art and all
stuff
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
and the
So, but
marketing.
my point is, I agree. If you can avoid all of that stuff in your game, great, do that and just do something that doesn't require that crap. But if your idea absolutely has to have that stuff, if that's what's in your head, then it might be necessary, right? You've just got to understand and internalize those risks and set your goals accordingly.
Mhm.
And that leads to the next thing, which is like when you're planning your stretch goals and stuff like that, do like what you were talking about there earlier, as
Yeah,
opposed to like, I will add 4 more miniatures to every box. Like, oh
absolutely.
God.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
that'll
that is the worst
definitely
choice.
another early Kickstarter that I did roughly around the same time as the Pebble, but I think of it afterwards, was Steve Jackson Games. Um, Someone told him, you know what you should do is you should release a new edition of Ogre, sixth edition of Ogre. And he said, but nobody wants to play Ogre. It's an old game. You know, it was our first ever game. And someone was like, have you heard of Kickstarter? And so they did a Kickstarter for Ogre. And raised nearly $1 million, which at that time, 2011, something like that,
It's just
2012,
insane. It's
it was
insane.
insane for a tabletop board game for sure. And they did the stretch goals thing and just kept adding and adding and adding
Yep.
and adding. And when that box finally showed up about 2 years late, maybe a little bit longer, it weighed 27 pounds. I'm not kidding. Like
Right.
that's what it said on the invoice thingy, from FedEx or whatever. Like they lost money overall on that $1 million thing by a ton. And
Yep.
it's only, from what I understand, it's only because they were a company that had been in business for so long, and also from I don't know Steve. I've met him a couple of times, but I think he's been smart over the course of his life and bought real estate. And so I think he's got that kind of money going on so that he's got that in the
Gotcha.
background. He didn't get rich by being a tabletop game guy, though he's done a ton of Munchkin, boxes and the Munchkin game and all that kind of
Sure.
stuff. And I'm sure it's done well for him. But yeah, they nearly, like they lost money on that $1 million or near $1 million, 923,000 or something like that, if I remember correctly. And it's just because the stretch goals just made that box bigger and bigger. When I got that
Yeah,
box, I
just
was
added
like,
physical stuff and
yeah,
real cost. You wanna try to find stretch goals that don't add like direct physical costs.
yeah. I wanted to keep it upstairs in the guest room underneath our bed because it was the only place I could figure out where to put that box, and it wouldn't go underneath the bed. It was too big.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. The next reason that I think why it might be necessary that's important here is it can help with exposure. Okay.
I think this is the
Now,
main reason why people think that they should do it is because of the marketing.
sure. Now, to be clear, it doesn't just being on Kickstarter isn't like some magic trick that gets you exposure. Okay.
Mhm.
You still have to publicize that thing and make sure that people are noticing it. And like, so go on social media and draw people to your campaigns and get on podcasts and other things and, do interviews and everything you can, everything you can. Right.
Mhm.
One of the things you can do is like cross promote. Like you can figure out what other Kickstarters are also running and reach out to those creators and see if you can't cross promote stuff with them or whatever, right? If they're also in your space or whatnot, right? Where you tie them together, you cross advertise, stuff like that. It's not as though it's suddenly free, uh, uh, like a free ride toward everybody knows your stuff. It's a ton of noise and very little signal,
Yeah.
but it does help, right? It's another avenue.
It's easier than just well, it's not easier. I would say it is you possibly might get a little bit more exposure than just putting up a website and saying, "Hey, would you like to buy this?" You
That's
know?
right.
And there have been successful Kickstarters that we've talked to, people recently, like, we talked about, we talked to the folks from 1490 Doom, and they had a game founded, not a Kickstarter, and theirs did well and was successful. But I can guarantee, I know for sure that they spent a bunch of money on marketing because I saw ads for their game found on Facebook constantly. Like it was sponsored content, which is not free. So they were spending up front to get people on Facebook to find out about their Kickstarter, and then they would go and then, or sorry, the game found, and then go from there. So that's a big thing. Flames of Orion by Steve from the Hive Scum podcast. That did, roughly what he was looking to do, and it's going to work out well for him. But he has a podcast of people he can talk to.
Right. He had an established audience, and that's just it. If you have no built-in audience, like the same rules still apply,
Absolutely.
right? If you have some kind of built-in audience or people and you can mobilize them, then yes, you stand a better chance of your Kickstarter being successful. But at the same time, it's like if your idea doesn't really need the Kickstarter, you could probably get about the same amount of success just mobilizing them in the same way with making the thing. But
which is what we did.
right, exactly. Now, there's one more thing I think in the positive category here that I think is important, okay? Which is capital formation. So what I mean by this is if you plan it well and do your sort of business casing, set your stretch goals smartly and make sure that you actually do clear some amount of net money, quote unquote profit from the thing, okay? What's realistically that allows you to do is be successful with your game in the future if you want to keep making stuff for that game. So, what I mean by that is you might run a fairly conservative Kickstarter for the first thing. Like, yeah, this could be somebody wants to do an ecosystem type play,
Sure.
but it might also just be that they want to have an expansion or two, or they had ideas that they wanted to address that they couldn't do within the span of that Kickstarter because they knew it would be too complicated and drive the cost too high. So they wheeled it back, did something correct, right? We're going to do the book and I'm going to have like these STL files available. Okay, cool. They're very constrained. Their
Mhm.
stretch goals were like some additional writing and, stuff that doesn't have physical costs. And we'll give you an extra PDF or two, whatever, right? And then they're successful. And that gave them like a base of capital that then they can work from that the next time they want to run another Kickstarter or now they have a built in audience just release more product for,
Mhm.
they now have money they can mobilize to like make actual, we're going to, more STLs are available and I can pay some artists to do some more stuff and so on and so forth. Right. So it can be a way to get the ball rolling that might be tough if you're literally starting from zero. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's still you can't expect it to just work because it's a Kickstarter. You have to still figure out a way, hustle in whatever fashion to get the marketing to make it happen so that people see the Kickstarter. But if you could get it to start going that way, then you could use it to continue if you were going to go down that road, and that makes sense. But on the other hand, you could also just start an indie game and do it in like a print on demand, very little upfront other than paying artists and layout and go down that road. And then potentially start to take that money that you make from it and pour that into the next thing and the next thing. And there's that possibility as well. So there's that benefit. But yeah, Kickstarter, if you can get it to work, it could potentially fund further things. But I don't know. I see a lot of Kickstarters that seem like, well, sometimes I see them being one and done, but the benefit is if it did kind of even work a little bit, you now have a list of people that at the very least you can say, here's the next thing.
Correct. It sets up your marketing. It sets up a
Mhm.
lot of things. Yeah. If you run it correctly. So, like, really look at your cost sheet, figure out what your risks are, be conservative with your business planning, set appropriate stretch goals that do not introduce additional risk, set an appropriate base goal that actually will fund you with, clearance, right, for
Yeah.
success and fluctuating costs and all of that. Plus, then and work social media and stuff like that. There are lots of publications and like online magazines and stuff that cover Kickstarter that don't just cover like new games that have come out as readily, right? Like there are a whole kind of aggregate information sources dedicated to just like talking about Kickstarter and GameFound and stuff like that, right? If you can get in those places, you're right. It builds you an audience, it can build you capital, and ultimately it could allow you to kind of, if run correctly, to hit that escape velocity. My point is, it will be an awful experience. You will have to work 3 times as hard as you think you're going to have to, even if you think you'll have to work very, very hard.
Mhm.
Okay. It will consume your life for some amount of time. But if done correctly, it can get you there. Right.
It's why they
It's
call it
just
Kickstarter.
very, yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
It's just very, 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 very difficult. And often, if you're not already, like, if you don't already have the good business sense, right, of like being the spreadsheet person who really knows how to knock out a business plan and really do a
Mhm.
cost sheet and stuff like that, it's just very risky.
Yeah. I think that it's something that as indies, and we're talking about indies here, that's the whole point of the podcast, I would probably stay away from it. I would, if it was me, and I didn't have a
And it
YouTube
is us.
channel. Well, yes, but we've got like we cheated by spending 10 years building an audience. But I'm saying if you haven't done that already, then trying to start doing that in parallel to making your first game idea or whatever it might be, and then doing it in a print on demand or a PDF or whatever, and going from there. Maybe after you've made 2 or 3 titles and you've started to build an audience, both of your
Right.
games and of the other things that you're doing, maybe it's an Instagram or a blog or whatever, and you're doing that, then maybe is the time to start thinking about Kickstarter or GameFound, anything along those lines. I honestly do not believe that it is a good idea for your first thing in any situation.
I agree. If you build the audience first, it just sets you up much better later.
Yeah, I agree. Well, there we go. I think we have the definitive answer on whether you should use crowdfunding for your indie game or not. And I'm sure that there's no discussion that can be had about this. But if you did want to, you could always, put a comment on the YouTube or whatever. There's all kinds of things like that. But thank you for checking out this episode of the SNARLcast. We hope we were able to teach you something. Well, probably. I hope so. If you've got suggestions for future topics, hit us up in the comments. Please check out our website at www.snarlingbadger.com. And if you just go to snarlingbadger.com/the-snarlcast, you'll find more information and also more episodes you can check out. You can follow us on your podcast software of choice. Leave a review if you get the chance, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, everybody.